All right, guys, so we have the cheapy Civic parked right here. We are about to take it on a POV test drive. I just want to show you guys what it feels like to drive a 1995 Honda Civic DX in 2024. And this car is completely stock. We haven't done any sort of modifications to it yet, so I wanted to get that done before we actually started working with the suspension and doing other things to the car in phase 2 of the build. So enough talking, let's hop inside and let's go for a little drive. But before that, let's check out this remote start that we installed in phase 1 of the build. All right, get the seat adjusted. So with these remote starts, it will run until you put your foot on the brake, and then it will automatically turn off. And this interior is completely stock. We did nothing to it other than add a MagSafe mount and this EJ2 CarPlay head unit. Shout out to them, by the way, for sending one of these over. But other than that, it looks exactly like it would have back in 1995 when you bought it. And a couple other things that we did add. This is a DX model, so it didn't originally come with a tachometer. So we added a cluster that has a tachometer there. And we kept the original speedo. That way the mileage is correct. And we also snagged a clock from the junkyard from an LX model, and from the same donor car we actually got this cool armrest. So that's really nice. It's helping the interior ergonomics a little bit more. Before we get started, got to adjust the seat, adjust the steering wheel. Oh, gotta adjust the mirrors a bit. Yep. Just a little bit of finger action there. And this one's fine. Again, living within 1995 in 2024 means that it's all manual everything. But it is a nice place to be in here. I love the feel of the turn signal stalk and the physical sound of the blinker relay as well. Don't quite get that on modern cars. So we'll take this out on a couple of local roads for now, just to get a feel for the car and show you guys what it feels like to actually drive this from the driver's seat. And then later on we'll take it on the highway for a little bit and show you how it accelerates and gets up to speed. I really love Honda Civics of this vintage, especially the 4th gen and the 5th gen Civics. They have that swooping hood that swoops all the way down low, so when you're sitting in the driver's seat, it's really easy to see where the edges of the car are, especially if you're just sitting in a seat like this where there is no height adjustment. So if you just sit up like a normal person and you don't slouch, you can actually see that sloping line of the hood, and you're like, all right, well, the bumper's right there. The car's so small, and the greenhouse or the glass is really letting a lot of light in, especially on a sunny day like this. I love how the A-pillars are still small prior to all of the crash requirements that they need these days. This is really nice to help with visibility, and of course the mirrors, the little parasail here for the mirrors is so tiny as well that you don't really obstruct any sort of view. Normally with other cars that I drive, I need a large Broadway mirror, but this short one that is only the length of the stock mirror is more than enough to deal with any sort of blind spots on this car. And honestly, without a wide mirror, you can actually get away just fine. Other than that, the interior is pretty Spartan. There isn't even a mirror here to check your makeup. There definitely isn't one over there, but we added one, or the previous owner added one. There's no map lights, there's only a dome light. And that's it. There's nothing powered on this car except for the power steering and the automatic transmission. Everything else is manual. Manual mirrors, manual windows, manual door locks, except we improved on those in phase one of the build. Everything else is manual. The 4-speed transmission in this can get a little jerky. I do think that the throttle cable could stand an adjustment, but these 4-speed transmissions are pretty clunky by today's standards. Although, once you're in the 4th gear and you're on the highway, although the revs are pretty high when you're trying to keep up with modern speeds, it's still a smooth and tolerable experience. So in terms of having one of these as a daily driver in 2024, not such a bad idea. If you are new to this channel and you haven't seen any other videos of this cheapy Honda Civic build, as it sits right now, this car to buy, fix, and build only cost us $3,005. So for $3,005, I'd say this is a pretty comfy and reliable daily driver. Let's do a quick railroad track test over here. The stock suspension is definitely spongy and definitely needs replacing, but when you're on a smooth road, it is smooth enough and it is comfy enough. Although I do think that when this car was new, it definitely rode a lot smoother and a lot. Again, we're doing this POV video to show you guys what it feels like to drive a 1995 in 2024, and this car, like I said, is completely stock, no modifications whatsoever to it. So once we start modifying it, I think that's when we can go ahead and do another POV video to show you if it rides better, stops better, handles any better. So this is just our little baseline test and to show you guys what it feels like to drive one of these when you're next. This car doesn't even have ABS, and it's got small discs in the front and drums in the rear, but I do think that the stopping power that it has stock is more than adequate for daily driving, and I don't really think a big brake kit is necessary if you're just driving this every day on the street. That being said, there are plenty of swaps available, and you can swap to EX rotors and get larger discs up front, and you can also do a disc setup in the rear. Acceleration is good enough given that this car only has 102 horsepower, but I think as long as you're not trying to accelerate quickly with most modern vehicles and try to compete with them, then you'll be fine. I say that because a lot of drivers in New York are impatient and they love going from 0 to 50 miles an hour from stoplight to stoplight, and while that's not necessarily how I drive, it is something that you have to deal with every day when you're driving one of these cars in modern times. All right, so the GoPro, in typical GoPro fashion, died a little bit earlier, so we're back in the car after running some errands and having some lunch, and let's hit the highway and let's see if there's no traffic and we can get this up on some on-ramps. While we're waiting for the light to turn green, there's not much else to talk about in this pretty Spartan interior, but the dashboard layout is really cool. It's a short dashboard, so it aids in that visibility that I was talking about earlier. It's got this little vent over here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but this vent is kind of like that BMW 3 Series of the same vintage, and it's for the dashboard or the air circulation, so you can either have the air going that way or out through these vents over here. I don't really use that one. This is a 1995, so it has a passenger airbag, but I believe the earlier models had an airbag only if it was an LX trim and above. And that's pretty much it for the dashboard. The climate control is manual, but it is now a switched vent configuration. So the 4th generation Civic actually had a cable operated ducting or a vent system, and now it's all digital, and one of mine might be a little stuck, I'm not so sure. This does have air conditioning. That was an option back in the day, and it still has a cable to mix the hot and the cold. The stereo is OEM, but we actually changed that out. It came with an aftermarket stereo that wasn't as good, and that pretty much does it for this interior. It's very gray and it's very plain. It's got an ashtray in it, and it had a cigarette lighter that thankfully has never been used. But unlike modern cars, it only has one 12-volt cigarette lighter port. It doesn't have anything else. And it's got this little pocket here, but it doesn't really do much. It doesn't really store much. And oh, it's got a cup holder, which is very good at holding soda cans and small coffee cups and absolutely nothing else. Anyway, enough talking. Let's get it on the highway. We're almost at 60. It's uphill. Almost at 60. There's 60. And honestly, when you get to 60, although the revs are kind of high, we're almost at 3K, it does do 60 pretty comfortably. Wind noise is to be expected with a car from this vintage, and of course the rubber seals aren't doing as good of a job as they did back in 1995. Again, no surprise, but it is pretty comfy in terms of using it as a daily driver. Could stand some sound deadening, but we're not going to splurge on that. I think this is perfectly fine as is to drive every day. And like I mentioned in a previous video, I did some calculations. It gets about 30 mpg mixed highway and city, so I can't really complain about that. It costs about $25 to fill up with today's prices, and that's pretty good. And there's traffic. All right, so it looks like we're not really gonna be able to open up this Civic that much today. We did get a couple minutes of driving in, which I think is good enough to show what it's like to drive this 1995 Honda Civic DX in 2024, and honestly, it's still fun. I know it's an automatic, so it's not as fun as a manual, but again, as a daily, this is pretty fun. It's pretty cool, and when we're done with phase 2 of the mods, I think it will be even better than it is now. If you guys want to see more driving POV videos, drop a comment down below. If you guys want to see me driving this around the streets of New York City, let me know as well. I can definitely do a video on that. But that is gonna do it for now for driving a 1995 car in 2024. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, this is Eric from Bolts and Banter. I'll see you in the next one. Okay, maybe we could sneak in a little bit here. Can't sneak in anything.